Hey worshipers! I hear some of you want to know what voice part you are for the choir. Let's find out. Here we go. Alright, this one's a winner. We're geared up, ready to go. One of the questions I seem to be answering constantly is this: what voice part am I? Well, if that's a question you have, then here's your guide to finding out. The first thing we need to discover is what the voice parts actually are for a choir, and then we'll try and see if we can't fit you into a category. There are two main ways of breaking these voice parts down. And one of those ways is highs and lows. There are two voice parts that are high, there are two voice types that are low. So the high voices are soprano and tenor. The low voices are alto and bass. And each one of those voices represents a high and a low voice for both a men's and a women's voice. So the two men voices, that's the other way to kind of categorize these voice types for choir, is the men's voices, are tenor and bass. So tenor being the high, bass being the low. The two voice types for women's voices are soprano and alto. Soprano being high, alto being low. So you see those two ways of grouping voices, especially when you're talking about arranging a choir, as far as seating, as far as standing is concerned on risers or whatever you guys are doing. So the main ways is either to group them by highs and lows or to group them men and women. Those are the main ways. The high voices, soprano and tenor, generally sing melody, while the low voices, alto and bass, are usually responsible for more fundamental or adding some harmonic stuff to the music. When reading music, the women's voices, soprano and alto, are usually grouped together on the top staff, while the men's voices, tenor and bass, are usually grouped together on the bottom staff. That's if you're reading a grand staff. Sometimes they get their own lines, but usually they're still in that order: soprano, alto, tenor, bass. That's the easiest way to find them when you're reading music. Now, let's get into some specifics about those individual voice types. Soprano is the highest voice type for a choir. Whether coloratura or lyric, these voices are usually described as soaring, as agile. Sopranos sit atop the choir with their high melodies, and they usually add height to the sound of the choir overall. For church, in standard hymn settings, sopranos almost exclusively have the melody. Alto is the other women's voice part in the standard mixed choir. If you're a solo singer, you might consider yourself a mezzo-soprano or a contralto, but usually these two voice parts are combined to create an alto section in the context of ensemble singing, group singing. Alto is considered an inner voice in the choir because it sits between the very high, the soprano, and the very low, the bass. Altos have voices that can be described as pleasant, as strong, as easy. But we know that nothing can be more difficult than singing alto sometimes. Some songs have the alto singing only one or two notes the entire time, and that's so difficult to make something like that, only one or two notes, sound super interesting as a voice part. But somehow they manage. Tenor is the other inner voice in choir music. Tenors are usually used for a choir to double the melody, or sometimes supply some extra harmony tones alongside the alto to kind of fill out a chord, if you will. Tenors usually have voices that are described as heroic, as brave, as loud, as awesome. For full disclosure, I am a very proud tenor. In the context of a choir concert, tenors are sometimes forced to sing super high and super low. It makes singing this voice part very difficult for a program. And this is especially true when the arrangements jump between 4 and 3 voice parts. So the 3 voice part arrangements sometimes combine the tenor and the bass. They almost never combine the alto and soprano. And so they sometimes make them sing, E's and F's, but then they also make them sing those bass notes, those C, B, A, and beyond. And so that makes it an added challenge for tenors in the context of a concert. Basses are the lowest voice part in the choir. Basses have voices that are often described as deep, as resonant, as strong. And these attributes are what make the bass such a good and fundamental part of the choir. They provide the support. They provide the stability for the rest of the ensemble. Usually in the context of harmony, they supply the root of the chord, the very foundation of the sound, the harmony, the chord that is being constructed. It's the kind of sound that people want to crank up in their car and really, jam out to. And so, who can blame them? It's cool. Well, now that you know what the voice parts are, soprano, alto, tenor, bass, how do you know which category you fit into? Well, one of the easiest ways of finding out is going to a pro. Ask somebody who knows what they're talking about. Go to your choir director, go to your local voice teacher, or go to your school, and they're bound to have a music teacher of some kind. Somebody who can really listen to your voice, vocalize you up and down the piano, and figure out your range, and then let you know what category you best fit into. That's the easiest way of doing it. Well, what if you don't have access to somebody like that? Maybe you live in a rural place, or you just would rather do it yourself. Here are some methods that you can use to easily figure out where you stand as far as voice parts are concerned. Here's what you need. A piano. It could be digital or physical, like this one. A pen or pencil, something to write with. A piece of paper, something to write on. And that's it. All right, I'm hooking up the piano just for you. Here's what you're going to want to do. Go to the center of your piano and pick a pitch. Oops. There we go. You're going to match that pitch with your voice. And then just work your way up. And you're going to work your way up the piano until you feel or you hear a change in the sound. You're looking for the same sound until you get to a point where the sound starts to change. We call this passaggio, the passage. This area where your voice is moving to a different way that the mechanism is working. You take your pen, your piece of paper, you write down that note. So for me, this was generally where my voice starts to change is this F sharp G area. We'll call it G. And so I write down G on my piece of paper. Then I do the same thing. Pick a note in the middle. And then work your way down. That's about where my voice starts to change again. And so I write that down. That looks like a B flat. And so I write those two notes down. I make sure to take note of the octave. So this is C4 is middle C. So I go down to C3, and it's actually B2. B2. So I wrote that down, B flat 2. And then I work my way up, and it's a G, and this is a G4. So I wrote those two things down. B flat 2, G4. Great. So you've written down your highest and your lowest note. You've taken note of the octave. Remember that if you have a digital piano, sometimes those apps or whatever you're using will tell you the octave. But a good rule of thumb is that this C, middle C, is C4. And every octave starts over at C, or goes up or down. So C4, middle C, it's right here. It sounds just like that. So when you go down the octave, C3 or C5, C is what resets the octave number. Put the letter and then the little number next to it. It's that simple. The lower the number, the lower the octave. The higher the number, the higher the octave. That's what you need to remember. The next thing you're going to do is refer to your handy-dandy chart that tells the ranges of each of these voice parts. I'll include a link in the description below to a chart like it. But here I've got one in front of me, and that I'm going to refer to, and it says sopranos are from C4 to C6, altos from G3 to G5, tenors from B2 to A4, and basses from D2 to D4. Now, these ranges are my personal approximations for the standard 2-octave ranges of all of these voice parts. But of course, you could be either higher or lower of this. What you're looking for is something that most closely fits the range that you wrote down. Maybe you have a smaller range. It's not really 2 octaves. It's somewhere in between here, right? Maybe you only have a 5-note range. It's from this F to this C. Sure, whatever. But what you're looking for is something that is going to most closely fit. Where do you go and what voice part could you mostly align yourself with? This is important because composers use these same ranges to write for these voice parts in choir music. So, when you sit down for a choir rehearsal, maybe it's your first or whatever, you're going to be reading music that is specifically designed for these ranges. If you are singing a voice part that is not within your range, you're going to be singing notes that are either too low or too high for you. This could lead to fatigue. This could lead you to be discouraged because you just can't do it. And there's nothing wrong with that. You're just in the wrong voice part. Well, you ask me, what if I've been singing this voice part forever? Well, you may need to consider that you have been singing the wrong voice part forever. And that's okay. You can change it right now. If you've got more questions, especially if you've been singing a different voice part, go back and listen to the descriptions of the voice parts that I talked about earlier. And really take a hard look at yourself and your range and ask yourself some questions. Am I singing something that is not me? Am I trying to be something that I'm not? And if the answer is yes, and you're taking a hard look, you're really doing some soul searching, then it's time to make a change. And it can be hard, but I believe in you. You could also ask yourself some other questions like, was my voice different when I started singing than it is now? When I started to sing, was there a need for the voice part that I'm currently singing? And when I started, did my leader, my director, or myself, did someone choose the voice part I'm currently singing without listening to my actual voice first? If you answered yes to any of these questions, you're likely singing the wrong part. Directors, while they mean well, sometimes have other things going on in their lives and in their ensembles that they need to contend with. So sometimes they see that you can sing more than one part, and so they put you on the part that needs the most help. Maybe you're a strong singer or a strong reader, and so they felt like you could help that section. That's a great reason for putting you in the part, except for when it's leading you to become more fatigued over the course of time. Sometimes you're placed because that was the part that you were, but your voice has changed since then. You've gone through some life things. Stuff changes, stuff happens, and your voice is different, just like you're different. Sometimes you're just placed because that's what everyone thinks you are. They just think you're a soprano, but that's not actually what your voice type is. You're really an alto. I myself am guilty of this sometimes, but I try and correct the mistakes that I've made, especially in placing voice types, especially in young voices, because their voices change so quickly. I really try to get them to re-audition, to re-up, for me to listen to their voices at least once a quarter, every 3 months or so. If they're experiencing some rapid physical change, then I try and get them in at least once a week until that change kind of stops or slows down. Remember, the voice is a living instrument. It is a direct reflection of your physiology, and there's nothing wrong with that. But singing the right voice part for you will ultimately allow you to sing longer without fatigue, sing easier without straining or pushing your voice, and empower you because of your self-revelation. Learning more about yourself is always a good thing. I'm curious, did you learn something new about your voice that you didn't already know? Let us know in the comments below. What voice part are you? What voice part do you think you're going to become if you're going through some changes? I'd love to hear from you. After you're through commenting, please hit the like button on this video. And as always, consider subscribing to this channel for more content about learning music and growing in music leadership. Well, I hope you had fun. Because I did. As always, worshipers, go in peace.